And I just think of, guys that aren't no-tilling. I don't know. They probably have to have 10 to 20 bushels more an acre at, $4 corn. When you start figuring the machinery costs, of which are out of sight these days, the fuel, the trips across the field that they're taking that I'm not.
Hello and welcome to Illinois Corn TV. I'm your host, Shane Gray. Today we're joined by Randy DeSutter. Randy's a lifelong farmer from Woodhull, Illinois. Randy and his family have used conservation practices such as no-till filter strips and cover crops for nearly 30 years. Randy is the former president of the Illinois Corn Growers Association and currently serves on the board of directors for the National Corn Growers Association, where he serves as the liaison of the Risk Management Action Team. Randy, welcome to Illinois Corn TV.
Hey, Shane, it's fun to be here.
All right. Oh, you think it's fun now? You wait till we get to those corny jokes.
I'm ready.
All right. Hey, couple things here. It's always an honor to have someone who's not only served at the state level, but also at the national level. And one of the things that I've always been a little bit curious of is, when serving on the Illinois and the National Corn Growers Associations, are there any changes in how we see policy or advocacy for farmers from state level to national level?
Well, when you're on there, you realize how vast the country is and, how different the weather is. I mean, Illinois could be flooded and other parts of the country could be having a drought. And you also get to realize all the different issues. Some of them, irrigation and water is just huge for some areas of the country. And then you get in the South, like in Texas, and they worry about aflatoxin every year. So there's
Yep.
And some of the other places in the South, I mean, all their corn goes to poultry feed or livestock feed. So it's a different world across the country, and it really comes home when you're on the national board.
When you look back at your time there, whether it was just serving as a member of the board of directors or even in your role as president and leadership, was there any one thing that you believe was an accomplishment that you were most proud of while serving on the board at Illinois Corn?
Well, there's a couple that really stand out.
Oh, great.
One year, it was almost Christmas time, and Congress was about to adjourn, and they were going to vote on USMCA, 5 or 6 years ago, whenever that was. So Jim Tarman and Mark Muzzlemeyer and myself, we flew out to visit all the congressional people in D.C.
That's a pretty rough crew right there.
And we joke it's because of us that it passed, because Illinois, there was only one congressman that voted against it. All the others and the senators voted for it. And it was a very relaxed atmosphere because they were just hanging out, waiting to go home. We'd go in and visit. No, stay a while, you got nothing to do but wait for this vote. So that was fun. And then, as you know, locks and dams are very important to us in Illinois, because so much of our grain goes down the river, be it the Mississippi or the Illinois River. And Sherry Bustos, who was my congressman,
right?
She worked really hard on it. Lots of congressmen in Illinois worked really hard on it. And when that infrastructure bill went through and passed, and had stuff for locks and dams, I got a personal call from her. In fact, I kept the voicemail on my phone.
There you go.
Because that was a landmark deal.
Right.
We've got Lock and Dam 25 that they had a groundbreaking for. Hopefully they'll get something done on it.
Right.
But that's a really big deal. And I know Jim Tarman's worked about 30 years on it.
Yes.
That's how long and how hard it is to get stuff like that through Congress. So those two things really stand out.
Well, I would agree with you on that. That locks and dams, the funding and stuff for that was such hard work and so important. And I know today there's probably amongst Illinois farmers, if you're educated or aware of the issue, probably a little bit of frustration and maybe how slow the process is actually taking. Now that we've we've kind of gotten that thing across the finish line. And we just recently got back from Panama and went through the Panama Canal. And when you see how important it is to get that product from one place to another by water, it makes you even a little bit more frustrated back home, thinking, man, this is something that has to get done. And if they can build that in the as few a number of years as they built the Panama Canal, we ought to be able to update our locks and dam system in at least the same amount of time, but it looks like it may take longer. Hey, I was reading your bio on the National Corn Growers Facebook, and you had some really interesting stuff on there as far as your farming practices. And I was impressed by the number of years that you and your family have been on the conservation side of this, which for many of us around here, myself included with cover crops, it's a fairly new practice. So what's your approach, and what was your approach when you started 30 years ago to enter into the soil conservation practices? Maybe not the approach, but maybe what was your thought or your incentive on that?
Well, it's kind of ironic how it happened. They had conservation plans we had to do in the early 90s. I believe we had to have them in place by 94. And we have a lot of highly erodible ground. So, we couldn't be out there doing tillage and that sort of thing very much to comply with the farm program. So let's say we had 160 and half of it was highly erodible and the other half wasn't. So we'd work one side and no-till the other. And we found that the yield was the same. So we said, why are we doing all this extra work going out there chisel plowing, field cultivating, all that sort of thing? So that's what got us into no-till 100%. And I just think of, guys that aren't no-tilling, I don't know, they probably have to have 10 to 20 bushels more an acre at, $4 corn. When you start figuring the machinery costs, which are out of sight these days, the fuel, the trips across the field that they're taking that I'm not. So, and I look at our county, our yields compared to the county, and we're above average. So I feel good about it.
Well, I think, as we see more and more farmers, at least perking their interest when it comes to some of these conservation practices, it seems like one of the drawbacks is always like, well, what kind of a yield drag am I going to have? And I know that was one of my concerns. But our first few years of minimal till or cover crops, I'm like you. I see no yield drag whatsoever. So I'm like, this is kind of a no-brainer for me. I don't know why I would do all that other stuff. And at a time when margins are tight, equipment, I try to keep this equipment as long as I possibly can. The less I have to get out there and use it, the better it's going to work out for me, I think.
Yeah, we've also, did some pattern tiling, and you kind of got to work those fields or you're going to break your neck. Right. So, when you go work those fields, even if it was done in the fall, they're not yielding any better.
No,
that sort of thing. So, I've even had some experience in the last 30 years where we had to do a little bit of tillage, field cultivate it, level it off, and those fields didn't really stand out. The tiling helped, of course, but they weren't any better than the other tiled fields.
What do you feel like is maybe the most critical national policy that growers are facing today?
Well, I think number one is profitability or lack of profitability. Times are tough, input costs are high, green prices are low, so to speak. So that's what's number one on everybody's mind. How can we get more demand so we get higher prices? How can we, what should I say? All these companies going together, the mergers and that. There's no competition out there anymore. Right. We all used to have a machinery dealer in our county, and now somebody owns 40 dealerships. There's no competition there. The Correct. Same way with fertilizer companies. It's a real problem.
Yep. Competition, regardless of what the industry is, it usually is a plus for the end user there. What do you see down the road for the corn industry in the next 10 to 15 years?
Well, I mean, there's some potential out there for increased demand, whether it's exports of corn or ethanol. But one thing, I'm on the biofuels committee now at National. Um, Maritime fuel is a huge possibility, and kind of something that we just kind of have started looking at, and it's a drop-in fuel as opposed to sustainable aviation fuel where they have to refine the ethanol even more, and it's very
Right.
costly and takes a lot of subsidies. So that's something where we've got a real big potential if we can get into that market, because it's you know we don't have to do a lot of extra work.
Well, and I could see that. Like I'd mentioned earlier, we had been on these vessels down in Panama here in the last week or so, and just the size of the fuel tanks on these ships or these vessels of maybe 1 million gallon plus. I was just blown away by how much fuel they not only store and have with them, but how much fuel it takes to get from one destination to the next. And then when you start to ask questions about that, you begin to hear that maybe it's like a bunker fuel, maybe not even a real good blend of a diesel. So ethanol could be a big boost and a big plus to a lot of that. And maybe even I know a few years ago, we were talking sustainable aviation fuel, and I know they still are, but maybe have kind of pushed it down the road as a possibility. But this maritime looks like this is something that could happen very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think it could, especially since it's a drop-in fuel, and I think, when they get closer to shore, they got tougher regulations too,
Right.
like when they're unloading and
Exactly.
import and that sort of thing. So I think there is a potential.
As involved as you are now, and as you've kind of taken it to the national level, what was it that first got you thinking, hey, I need to get involved in policy making or your commodity associations?
Well, I've always been involved since I started as a 10-year-old kid in 4-H, and I probably enjoyed the people as much as
Yep.
anything, and in the long run, that's probably what you remember, the friends you made and that sort of thing. So I always enjoyed being involved, and then you also are really up to speed on what's going on,
Right. Right.
in your farming operation, and you meet a lot of people too that you learn things that you don't a little different than in your backyard. So you get
Yep.
perspectives from across the state, across the country. So those are great things, and one of the reasons I like to do it.
If you were to have the opportunity to speak to a young group of maybe potential farmers or future agriculture or industry people, what would be some advice that you might offer to those folks?
Well, I'd advise them to get involved, and there's a million ways to get involved. I mean, be a member, join the organization. So we've got staff and others working for it. We have nowadays, with all the modern technology, we have emails and text alerts and stuff. And when we send out something, say to support E15 or support this trade bill or the farm bill or whatever, reply to those, you know, support us that way. I mean, our daughter worked for a congresswoman one summer, and they count the numbers. They
Oh
really
yeah.
do.
Yep.
So, your number matters, or call them, or go visit them sometime when they're at a location and ask a question, or get to know them. That's even the best thing you can do if you can't be on the board, or
Yep.
if you do have time, you know,
Yep. I
join
agree.
join the
You know,
board and that sort of thing.
stay connected, stay educated. Because it only makes you better. The knowledge is power right there. So stay connected with them. Here we go. Favorite part of the show, the not to be corny, but here's the corny joke of the day. So, are you ready for this one? Here's the question, or the joke, however you want to look at it. Not to be corny, but what does a farmer get when he pampers his cows?
A dirty diaper. I don't know.
Spoiled milk. Just like your
Or
kids, you pamper your kids, are going to end up be spoiled. So, yeah, spoiled milk. That's the best I have for today on corny farm jokes. So, well, hey, Randy, that's all the time we have. Again, it's always a pleasure talking to you, whether it be here on the Corn TV show or whether we get to see each other in person at several of our events. Appreciate having you on, and best of luck. Hope everything goes well as we enter into this next growing season.
Thanks a lot, Shane.
Okay. Talk to you later, Randy.
See ya.